Hi, I'm here with Mary Jo Tate. She is the author of Flourish, Balance for Homeschool Moms. She has 4 sons and she has homeschooled since 1997. She teaches homeschoolers, single moms, and work at home moms how to balance family life with homeschooling and running a home business. She's an international editor and book coach, and she teaches entrepreneurs, speakers, and other experts how to write books, whether or not they can write. She loves to share her passion for reading and writing and has a heart for helping, encouraging, and inspiring other homeschoolers. So what we'll do tonight is talk to Mary Jo and find out a little bit about her and her family and how they homeschool. And then we'll move on to talking about her new book, Flourish, Balance for Homeschool Moms. And so we're going to have a good time. So let's get started. Mary Jo, the first question I have is just if you would tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and how you got started homeschooling.
Right. Well, thanks so much for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. It's a privilege. And I have, as you mentioned, 4 sons. They're currently ages 22, 19, 17, and 13. So we're out of those early years of baby days and toddlers and preschoolers, but I haven't forgotten what it was like back then. I've been homeschooling 17 years. I have been a single mom for the last 13 years. My husband left when the youngest boy was 6 months old, and so we've been homeschooling and a family on our own since then, but God has been very good to us and very gracious to us and brought us all along the way, and so I'm very thankful for that. I've had a home business for 28 years as an editor, and I've been working at home almost all that time. And for me, I don't even remember anymore how I first heard about homeschooling. I did go to my first homeschool meeting when my oldest child was about 2 or 2.5 years old. And it just sort of was a natural progression. I knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And as my oldest child approached kindergarten age, it just didn't make sense to me to suddenly send him away to someone else to be training and raising. I had been teaching him from birth, and it didn't make any sense to suddenly hand that over to someone else. Now, of course, that was my initial motivation, but over the years I found so many more benefits. I love the flexibility of homeschooling. I love the way that I can customize it to each of my son's gifts and interests. To me, one of the biggest benefits is the close family bonds between parents and children and also between siblings. My sister was 5 years younger than me, which might as well have been in a whole other country in a classroom school, and I feel like I missed some of the closeness I might have been able to have with her, and I see that closeness in my boys. They're really good friends, sometimes really good sparring partners as well, but I feel like homeschooling has really facilitated that for us. In my early homeschooling days, I was very much a hands-on, sit right next to him while he did everything kind of mom. That was when I only had one student and a baby or toddler. And then as my kids have gotten older, my homeschooling style has changed all through my book, and everything I ever teach anyone, I talk a lot about flexibility and doing what works for you in your current situation. So when my boys were younger, I was very hands-on, did a lot of one-on-one instruction. As they have gotten older, especially when they become fluent readers, it's been much more about guiding their independent studies. Some of that has been out of necessity. As a single homeschool mom, I've had to really grow my business to a point where it supports us, and the boys have had to learn how to be more independent. But actually, that has been a blessing in disguise because they've learned how to be responsible for their own time. I give them a list of lessons on Monday morning, and they can do all their math on Monday or a little bit each day as long as they finish everything by Thursday afternoon because we have a co-op on Friday. So there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of independence, and my 2 oldest sons have now finished 2 years and 1 year of community college, and learning how to be responsible for their own time and their own deadlines has really worked out well for them. But they can still show up for an 8 o'clock class, so that has worked out well for us. I can't imagine any other kind of life. I love having my kids at home with me.
Yeah, I do too. I'm so glad to be able to be here with them. And you're right, there are some challenges when you work from home, or even for moms who don't work from home, because really we all work.
Oh, yes, there's no such thing as a mom who doesn't work.
Right, right. So it can be difficult, but at the same time I think it's good for our kids to to learn how to balance the working and homeschooling and then just the regular family life and activities and cooking and cleaning and all that, which actually brings me to the second question. And that is, why did you write this book, Flourish, Balance for Homeschool Moms? And what does it mean to you when you say that we can flourish as homeschool moms?
Well, that's a good question. This book has really been brewing for a long time, probably for at least 10 years. And it started actually with a course that I taught back in 2007 called How Do You Do It All? Because that was the question people asked me. And of course, the secret is nobody does it all.
Right.
But that course, and then later on this book, which is a considerable expansion and refinement of that, grew out of my own frustration with not finding the help that I needed. I love to read, so I have read lots of books on organization and time management and planning and goal setting and home management and all of these things. And I found that at least the ones that I read mostly fell into two categories. There were the sort of executive corporate time management type books that seemed to be written for people with corporate offices and secretaries and staff, and they focused exclusively on business and very little attention to the reality of a family life at home. And then there were books that were written for stay-at-home moms or maybe homeschool moms, and they had a lot to say about home management and cooking and cleaning and where to put stuff and how to raise your kids. But I would often look at the sample schedules or the topics in there and say, well, where do they fit in the earning a living part? You know, what about me because I have a business and there's no way to fit that in here? And so it really grew out of my sense of a need for something that spoke to the homeschool mom who also had a home business. Now, let me say right now, if you don't have a home business, this still applies to you because even homeschooling can be considered a full-time business. But that was the lack that I felt. And also beyond that, even in the books that had helpful tips, I was really frustrated because it's very easy for a how-to book to kind of convey this supermom standard, and rather than helping you, it gives you this sense of guilt and this burden that you're not quite living up. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles that homeschool moms have, is that sense of not living up to somebody's standard. And so for me, I wanted something that was practical. I am not super mom. Let's get that out of the way right now. Something that was really practical, that was really based in real life and the challenges of every day. I feel like I've test-driven a lot of the mistakes, and so that maybe other people can learn from what I've learned as a result of making those mistakes. And I really want to be encouraging and inspiring and flexible. I want moms to come away from our time together tonight and come away from reading my book with a sense of help and hope, not a sense of frustration. As far as what it means to flourish, the word just sort of came to me in the middle of the night one night, and I realized that conveyed the sense of energy and vibrance and beauty that is the hallmark of a life that's well lived. The word flourish means to grow vigorously or to luxuriate or to abound. It can also mean a dramatic flair, like a trumpet fanfare. It can mean making dramatic gestures on the stage or doing something fancy in writing or decorating. And the whole idea behind the word flourish is thriving and abundance. And that's the kind of vibrant life that I think homeschool moms want. But very often we tend to get bogged down in the challenges of our daily lives, and we start kind of drooping and wilting like a flower that hasn't been watered in a long time. And when you're flourishing, that means as a plant, it's got the right soil, it's got the right nutrients, it's got the right amount of light and the right amount of water. And if you look at a plant that hasn't been watered in a long time and it's droopy and wilty, and you pour the water on it and you see it almost sort of say, ah, and spring back to life. That's kind of the sense of flourishing. And when you are flourishing, you can take better care of your family as well so that they can flourish too. And I love the verse from Isaiah 58:11. It says, "The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail." And that's really the vision that I have for homeschool moms and the kind of encouragement that I hope that they'll get from the book?
The subtitle of your book is called Balance for Homeschool Moms, and I've heard different people talk about that, and I know what I think of, and when I think of that, I think that I've got to be perfect. I've got to, always have dinner cooked and always get the kids' schoolwork done and always run, the kids all the places they need to go and just all of these things. So, what do you think? Do you think it's really possible to achieve that balance?
That's a great question, because there are a lot of people who either promote the sort of unattainable standard of balance or who disparage the whole idea and say, well, it's impossibly balanced, you shouldn't even try. And so I thought long and hard before putting that word in the title of the book. And I've come to the conclusion that a lot of the people who say balance isn't possible have a false idea, or at least a different idea, of what it means to balance. Because there's this sense that if your life is balanced, you have an exactly proportioned amount of time and attention on everything. It's almost like your life is a pie chart, and every aspect of your life has an equal-shaped wedge in that pie chart. You have your family wedge here, and it's so big, and you have your work wedge here, and it's so big, and your personal life here, and it's so big, and they're all exactly the same, and that's what that idea of balance seems to convey. Well, obviously that's impossible, because there's no flexibility there. Our real lives demand some adjustments. Think about an old-fashioned balance scale. If you were weighing feathers and rocks, you would not have exactly the same number of feathers as you did rocks, would you? Because they'd go flying up in the air. You would have enough feathers to make this to counterbalance the rocks. And then if you suddenly dropped an orange in on top of the pile of feathers, that would change the balance again. So there's a process of adjustment. And to me, being balanced doesn't mean that you spend an equal amount of time and energy on all of your responsibilities. It means that you spend an appropriate amount of time and energy. So what balance looks like every day is going to change for you. Even if you have a fairly predictable routine or schedule, there's always going to be unexpected things that come up, emergencies or opportunities, and then of course you have to decide what to say yes to. But to me, the image of balance, I think of somebody walking on a tightrope. And I don't know if any of you saw Nick Walinda crossing the Grand Canyon in Niagara Falls a few years ago, but I read an interview with him where he talked about how he uses that balance pole, and he uses it to adjust to the changing conditions and to the wind around him. And sometimes if the wire that he's walking starts bouncing, he'll actually kneel on the wire to pause and take a break until the conditions stabilize, and then he can continue safely. And to me, that's a wonderful metaphor for the life of a mom, because we have to do that. We have to constantly adjust. You're not making, you're not going like this crazy unless you're a circus act, and we don't want life to be a circus act every day. But you make little adjustments in response to the changing conditions, and you're using that balance pole to stay on track and on focus, and it's a process of responding to life in a flexible way. And I think that's really what it means to be balanced.
So balance will be different for me than it will for any other mom.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and that brings us to the next question. Who would benefit from reading your book? Is it for all homeschool moms, no matter what our kids' ages are, no matter whether we work or don't work or have a home business or don't? Who do you think would benefit from the book?
Well, the subtitle is a little bit of a trick, I guess, but, well, not a trick, but it could be misleading, because it is for all homeschool moms, but not just for homeschool moms. It's for moms with kids of all ages, and it's for moms who are homeschooling. It's for moms who maybe would like to homeschool, but they're not sure if they could manage it. I think that's actually a group that would be very helped by it because of the realistic, flexible approach that I endorse. It's for stay-at-home moms. Maybe their kids aren't school age yet, or maybe their kids are in school. There's still a lot of advice for them as well. Work-at-home moms, whether or not they homeschool, would particularly benefit from it as well. Really, all moms, I think, have something to learn from it. And actually, I've already had a couple of dads tell me that they've learned something from it as well. So even though it's primarily directed to moms, especially moms at home, and even more especially homeschool moms, really anybody who struggles with the challenges of meeting all of their responsibilities and balancing their daily life can learn something from it.
In the book, you mention, I really liked this, you mentioned life management rather than time management. All the books we read talk about time management. So how is life management, what is that actually, and how is that different and more useful to a mom who's trying to find balance?
Well, that's another good question. I do talk a lot about time in the book because we only have 24 hours a day, so all of our decisions in managing our lives do involve making choices about time. But we can't really manage time, and we talk about I need to make time for something. Of course, we can't make time either. All we can do is allocate it to fit our lives. And to me, the term life management takes a broader view of all of the responsibilities of your life. It's not clock focused, but it's dealing with all of those circumstances both by planning ahead and dealing with things as they arise. It's about the everyday choices that we have to make with things that we can look ahead to and things that happen on the spur of the moment and being prepared for that. And it's really important to remember that saying yes to one thing at any given time means saying no to everything else at a given time. Now, some people are really resistant to the idea of planning or setting goals because they think, well, maybe what if something else comes up that I want to do? But the fact is, whether you write down your goals or not, I've got a whole chapter on that, whether you plan ahead or not, every moment of every day you have to make a choice how you're going to use that time and how it fits into the rest of your life. And no matter how we plan, we have to be able to respond. I have a fairly organized life. Most of the time I'm pretty good about setting goals and trying to hold myself accountable. Sometimes I get off track and then have to get back on again. But for all of us, no matter how organized or disorganized we are, life happens. A couple of years ago, my oldest son was in a bad car wreck. An unlicensed, uninsured driver T-boned him, making a left turn, and if it had been an inch away, he probably would not have survived the wreck. God protected his life, but I spent that whole day in the emergency room. And that day, the clock didn't matter, my planner didn't matter, my schedule didn't matter, even my editing deadlines didn't matter. All that mattered was getting there to that hospital and being there with him. And so to me, the idea of time management is more, well, I had all this stuff I was going to do, and life management is, this is my top priority right now, go. And that's a pretty good illustration of what I mean by the difference.
I liked, too, that you mentioned setting goals. I've always thought of setting goals maybe as something I would do for my job, and I never really thought that much about setting goals for my kids or for my household. Maybe I did some for homeschooling, but all the other things I just never really thought about setting a goal for how I want those other things to happen. And I thought that was something that was really important that I think can help us know if we're on track or not. If we don't have those goals in different areas, then we're just really kind of guessing and sort of just going whichever way life takes us without really knowing where that is and where we want to end up.
Right.
So I liked that.
I'm glad that was helpful.
It was. Now I've got to teach it to my children.
Yeah, that's the ongoing challenge as well.
Okay, our next thing I'd like to talk about is there's a chapter in your book called Solo Act, Flourishing as a Single Mom. Nowadays, there are more and more single moms who are homeschooling. That's still relatively new, and I know that we get questions a lot from single moms. How do you do this? But, they want to hear from a single mom who's been there and done that. So could you tell us a little bit about how you handled that as a single mom, and maybe what's been your biggest struggle and how you overcome that, and how can you encourage single moms who want to homeschool and maybe work from home?
Okay. I've been a single mom for about 13 years now, and so I definitely understand the challenges. I'm a long way down the road, so the struggles aren't as fresh, but there are still times when I struggle with frustration or discouragement or loneliness or just feeling overwhelmed with my responsibilities because there's no one to share them with. And it is a challenge. All of the challenges that married moms face are pretty much doubled for the single mom because there's no one to share the load, no one to bounce ideas off, no one even for just relief duty, and sharing the responsibilities. And it can easily be overwhelming. And the fact is we cannot do it in our own strength. One of the biggest lessons I've learned from being a single mom these past years has been that I have to rely on God. It's taught me to rest in Him in a new way, to rest in His faithfulness. He promises to be a father to the fatherless and to provide for the widow and orphan. A single mom isn't technically a widow, but there's that same sense of a mother raising children without a man alongside her. And so if we focus on our circumstances, it's really easy to get discouraged. But if we turn our eyes to God and lean on His faithfulness, that is the true source of power. And I would just really encourage others that the single mom chapter has two parts. There's a section for single moms of encouragement and some advice. One of the challenges is not feeling like a real family. We hear about all the hazards of a broken family and kids growing up without a father in the home. Your child does not have to become a statistic. God is bigger than the statistics, and He can overcome those. There is some bad news out there, but there are also some wonderful stories of people who have grown up in single-parent homes and who have gone on to have wonderful ministries and a powerful impact on the lives of other people. So do not be discouraged. Don't feel like you're a failure. Don't feel like you're not really quite up to par as a family. You are a family. This is the situation you're in, and so how are you going to deal with that on an everyday basis? And then for those of you who aren't single moms, the second half of that chapter is for you, because there is a single mom living down the street from you. There might be a single mom in your homeschool support group, maybe somebody at church who needs your help and your encouragement. So I've got several lists in there of ways that you can encourage a single mom, maybe just by a kind word or a note card, or let her know that you're praying for her, and practical ways that you can help. Maybe it's financially, maybe it's passing along some extra clothing or sharing a meal once in a while, or maybe it's the gift of your time through hospitality or through some kind of service. So if you are not a single mom yourself, but you know one, I'd encourage you to look at the second half of that chapter for some ideas. And single moms, I encourage you to receive help joyfully and graciously, and not to be discouraged if there's not anybody helping, because I know, unfortunately, that's part of the struggle. And for those of you who are helping single moms, remember that they're very discouraged and worn down, especially if it's a recent situation, and they may not necessarily be receptive at first, but keep offering. Don't just offer once. They need you sometimes more than they realize.
What do you think is the biggest challenge, or are the biggest challenges for homeschool moms in general?
Well, other than that only 24 hours in a day thing, which we've already talked about some, I think the thing that homeschool moms, and probably moms in general, tend to neglect the most is taking care of ourselves. And the reason for that is guilt. Back when I first taught that course several years ago, I surveyed dozens of homeschool moms and other moms at home, and guilt was one of the top words that came up. And I think part of it goes back to that sense of some outside pressure to create to reach an unattainable standard, or I'm not on Pinterest, but I know a lot of people these days, on Pinterest or Facebook or wherever, they see all these great and cool things that other people are doing, and they think, well, my life's not as good as that. So there's guilt. And all these things we're supposed to be doing, it's hard to make time to take care of ourselves. And we feel a little guilty. Well, I'm supposed to serve my family. I'm not supposed to have any me time. And it's almost a swing in the total opposite direction from the sort of radical feminist live for yourself. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about taking care of yourself so that you're not going to collapse into burnout and not be able to help your family. The chapter in the book is called Oxygen Masks and Monkey Bread Days. A monkey bread day is one of those days where everyone wants a piece of you. And we've all had those days. And of course, the oxygen mask, we've all heard what the airline attendant says, to put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others so that you won't pass out and be unable to help the child or the elderly person or whoever's sitting next to you that needs your help. And I think that's really a great thing for homeschool moms to remember, because it's not selfish to take care of yourself. You need enough sleep. You need to be getting good nutrition and not just living off the leftover Cheetos. You need to be drinking enough water, which has been a challenge for me at a lot of times. You need to be getting some sort of exercise, and you need some recreation. You need a break now and then. It's not selfish because it will actually refresh you. And goodness knows, I've got editing deadlines, I have book deadlines, I have deadlines for things my kids are doing. But sometimes I know I reach that point where I kind of hit the wall and I realize I have to take a break. I have to take that time away. And you think, okay, if I take 30 minutes for a break, for example, that's 30 minutes away from my work and I'm going to get behind. But surprisingly, sometimes taking that break can refresh you so much that you come back more energized, and the rest of your time is much more productive than if you had just plowed ahead, just dragging till you're so exhausted that you could drop. And I really think that is one of the biggest challenges. And if you still have a hard time for that, remember that not only are you taking care of your kids by taking care of yourself, but you're also setting an example for them. Because kids are so influenced by what they see in terms of how we live and not just what we say. And so if I, as a mom, am always hovering on the edge of burnout, and I'm not living a balanced life, I'm not living a flourishing life, that's the model that they're going to emulate when they're older, so I'm setting an unhealthy pattern for them. But if I teach them that it's okay to get the rest you need, to eat the things that you need, to take a break now and then, hopefully that's going to be a better pattern for them so that they won't have that much of a struggle when they're older.
Right, that's a good point. And it is hard as a mom and a homeschool mom to take a break when I need one, because I feel like I'm being lazy, I'm not getting done what I need to do. But I never really thought of it the way you just said it, that we're setting a good example for our kids. And I find that every now and then if I get away, I do feel like I can come back and handle things. So that's important. That's important to all of us. Okay, would you please tell us about your favorite chapter in the book?
Oh, that's a fun question. My favorite chapter in the book is called Making Memories. And it's all about things like family traditions, whether it's first day of school traditions or holiday traditions, things like taking special one-on-one time with each child, traveling and exploring the world, preserving those memories by writing them down, taking pictures and so on, and then about enjoying the journey as well as the destination. And I think out of all of and as I wrote that chapter, it reminded me so much of my own childhood and the happy memories. My parents did a wonderful job of traveling long distances to visit my grandmother every year, and we have a fairly small extended family, and they made sure that I got to know all of those relatives and to see them at least once a year, and that was really special to me. That's something that I think we're losing a lot, and they made it a priority, and so I have as well. And then just doing fun things together. Maybe you can travel, maybe you can take a vacation, maybe you can't. But sometimes it's the small things. It's the taking a child one at a time to Starbucks or a restaurant or something, and just letting them have your undivided attention and pour out their heart. And I found sometimes that works really well, especially, some of my kids will talk my ear off whether I'm particularly listening or not, and others, it's much harder to get them to share what's on their heart, but something about having that one-on-one time, often away in a different place, will really, really bring them out.
I like those ideas. I think that's something that a lot of us fail to do because we just don't think about it. And I think we do need, nowadays we could take pictures on our cell phones, which we have with us. It doesn't have to be something big and elaborate and that kind of thing. But then we can keep them on the computer and put them on a disk. I used to think that I had to do a big scrapbooking project or things like that, and it just got to feel overwhelming, and I quit doing it. So I like that those can be little things, easy to do. It doesn't have to be a big project or something very involved.
And it can even be as simple as taking your child with you one at a time. If your kids are old enough to stay at home, or maybe when your husband's home or something like that, instead of going to the grocery store by yourself, which can be a break, now and then, take one child with you to run errands, and even just the conversation in the car on the way there, or whether you stop for an ice cream cone on the way back or not, there's still that sense of the opportunity to have mom's relatively undivided attention. And so it doesn't have to be big and elaborate. It can just be finding those moments in the everyday opportunities of life.
Right. I like those. We do that when we run errands, and then whatever child runs errands with me gets to stop and have ice cream. And then we go do things like go to the library now and then and just sit and read some books together.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And some of those things, those don't cost much, if anything.
Right.
So those are things that pretty much anybody can do, or find some kind of alternative. So I like that. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about before we go on with information about how to buy the book? Is there anything we didn't talk about that you'd like to mention from the book?
Oh, I really think the overall message, and this is repeating myself a little bit, but just remember that there's no one right way to do the mom thing. This weekend I was speaking at a statewide homeschool convention, and so many of the moms I was talking with just were burdened down by the sense that they weren't doing it right. And what I wanted to share with them, and it was great to see sort of the light come in their eyes and sort of the burden lift off their shoulders a little bit, is God made you a certain way with certain gifts and a certain temperament and a certain way of handling things. And just because that's not the same way He made your friend or somebody on Facebook who's doing it better than you are, or at least who appears to be doing it better than you are, doesn't mean that the way you're doing it is bad. Now, again, we have to find the balance there. If what we're doing is not working, we may need to make some changes. But if it's working, it's absolutely fine if it's not the way everybody else does it. So there's no one right, perfect way. Don't try to figure out what's the best way to teach the multiplication tables. Try to figure out what's the best way to teach the multiplication tables to that particular child. There's lots of ways to learn what 3 times 3 is, and the end result is still the same. And I hope I get this right, 9.
Right. I like that your book encourages moms to do just that, to find the right way for your family, the right balance for your family. I know so many moms who are considering homeschooling are really worried that they're going to do something wrong and ruin their children's lives. And I think that's an unnecessary worry. But I think those moms are comparing themselves to other moms and thinking, I can't do it as well as she does. Right. Or, my kids aren't as smart as her kids. How am I going to handle this? What am I going to do? And the fact is that because you love your children and you choose to homeschool them, you're going to do a good job of it. You're not going to mess your kids up or cause them problems for the rest of their lives. You just have to, and it's like you said, you have to find what's right for your family and your child or your children.
Right. And that may change from year to year and from child to child.
Right. That's one of the things that was kind of eye-opening to me. I never really thought about the fact that my oldest child would not learn the same way as my second child, and my second child would not learn. Yes, I thought, okay, I've got it down. I know what I'm doing with this first kid. And then when the second one started homeschooling, I thought, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. But I got used to the fact that they learn differently, and now we've been homeschooling for about 17 years, and I finally realized it's okay if the last one can't use the first or second one's textbooks, or or those kinds of things. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. Okay, now let's talk about how people can buy your book. And if you would, tell us a little bit about the bonuses that you're including if people buy the book by May 30th.
Okay, great. Well, I am thrilled to be published by Apologia. I have actually been editing some of Apologia's books for several years, and I know how much effort goes into everything they publish, so I am thrilled to have Apologia as my publisher. The book is available on... Yes?
Sorry, Mary Jo. I totally forgot to introduce Michelle.
Yes, introduce Michelle from Apologia.
She's from Apologia.
Oh, yes.
And at the beginning, I totally did not introduce you, Michelle. So
oh, that's okay. I've been enjoying the conversation and soaking in some of the advice. Even though I've been homeschooling for 14, 15 years, I have a copy of Flourish and have been reading it and learning.
Yay.
And really appreciate Mary Jo sharing with us.
Okay, sorry, Mary Jo, I interrupted you. Go ahead and tell us.
That's fine. I can be flexible in response to the changing circumstances. So
That's right.
The book is available through Apologia at apologia.com. It's also available on my website at flourishathome.com if anybody happens to want a signed copy directly for me. And I'm excited about the bonuses that we have to offer. Now, there are some permanent bonuses that will always be available. The back of the book has about 7 planning forums to help you implement the principles that I teach in the book. Now, it's compatible with any kind of planner. If you have a planning system that you like, that's great. You can use that. But I also have the forums that I use personally in there. And so one of the bonuses is downloadable versions that you can customize so that you can fill them in so that you don't have to try to write in the little tiny page in the back of the book, you know. So those will be available permanently. And then just during this launch week through May 30th, a lot of my friends who write and speak and publish for homeschoolers and also in the business world have donated some great gifts. The bonus package is worth over $250 if you bought everything in it. But these gifts are going to be yours free when you buy the book and you download them by May 30th. And you can go to flourishathome.com/bonuses for the details on that. And there are ebooks, there are e-courses, there are audios about all kinds of things relating to homeschooling, homemaking, goal setting, marketing your business, Christmas traditions, even writing a book, teaching different subjects, and it's just some really wonderful things. I'm looking forward to reading through and listening to some of them myself.
Now, if people buy the book from Apologia and then go to your site for the bonuses, what do they need to do?
That's a great question. There is just a place where you'll put in your email address and your name and your receipt number. So if your order has a receipt number, that's all you need to put it in there. And if for some reason you don't have a receipt number, you can use the contact button to let me know.
Okay. All right. Michelle, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we go?
No, I'm good. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Mary Jo, for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks to both of you. We enjoyed the interview, and we hope that people will go buy the book. It really is helpful and encouraging, even as Michelle and I said, to moms who've homeschooled for a long time. And I wish a book like this had been available 17 years ago when I started homeschooling. So
I could have used it 17 years ago myself. I had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, thank you so much, and I guess we will say good night.
Good night. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.